Hello, everybody. My name is Jax James. I am the Executive Director for Texas Normal, here tonight to share with you guys a legislative update. We talked last March about some of the bills that have been filed and where they were going. Since then, the legislative deadline has passed for bills to be filed. So what we've got is what we've got. So I wanted to spend this time chatting with you guys about the bills that we have and where they are at in the process. Now, if you're not familiar with the legislative process in Texas, we meet every 2 years for 140 days, and they are action-packed. So we're going to dig right in. And by the way, if you are wanting to learn a little bit more about the legislative process, you can go to texasnormal.org and click on our activist training guide, and it will go over all of that information for you. There's some really great resources there. So I would like to request that if you get the chance and you are so inclined, please drop your city that you're watching from in the comments, because I would love to see where y'all are watching from all over the state. So without ado, let me go ahead and get started on this. I did mention that the filing deadline has passed. So these are the bills that we have. There's several medical cannabis bills I want to discuss. SB 121 by longtime medical cannabis advocate Senator Jose Menendez would institute a Let Doctors Decide type program and also institute some protections for medical cannabis patients and caregivers while creating a medical cannabis research advisory board. This bill has been assigned to the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, but it is pending a hearing. Additionally, very similar legislation, SB 127 by Senator Carol Alvarado, wants to also institute a Let Doctors Decide type program. This has been assigned to the same committee and is also pending a hearing. Now, in the House, we have HB 1200 by Representative Ron Reynolds that would let medical patients with qualifying conditions based on their cannabis or their doctor's advice to access medical cannabis. It would remove the THC cap by weight. It would allow for home cultivation and also institute parental and patient protections. This bill has been assigned to the Public Health Committee in the House and is pending a hearing. Now, there's a set of companion bills, HB 1805, which is authored by Representative Click, who has been the author of every iteration of the Texas Compassionate Use Program that has passed, and its companion bill has been authored by Senator Perry. These bills together would add chronic pain as a qualifying condition and replace the THC cap with volumetric dosing. It would further allow the Department of State Health Services, also known as DSHS, to designate qualifying conditions instead of legislators deciding them every 2 years. Now, the House version, HB 1805, has passed the Public Health Committee in the House and is in calendars awaiting to be scheduled for the floor debate in the House. What we're hearing is that right now there's a lot of priority legislation having to do with budget and other items that are being scheduled right now. So we are hoping to see that hit the floor in maybe the next week or so. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Now, its Senate companion has been assigned to the Public Health Committee in the Senate, but it is still pending a hearing. Another House bill is by Representative Jones that would allow the prescription of cannabis, and it would change the weight, the limitation of THC by dry weight to 5%. And it would allow the Department of State Health Services to decide conditions that could benefit. This has been assigned to the House Public Health Committee and is pending a hearing. There are 2 more medical bills, HB 2295 by Rep. Raymond, that wants to allow for veterans with combat-related injuries or medical conditions to be qualified under the TCUP program. Then House Bill 3535 expands the list of qualifying conditions to include Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, brain tumors, vascular insult to the brain, which is interesting phrasing. I'm not sure I know that what that means exactly. Spinal cord disorders, traumatic brain injury, post-polio syndrome, muscular dystrophy, myasthenia gravis, peripheral neuropathy from Huntington's disease, Friedreich's ataxia, and a few other conditions. This has been assigned to public health and is pending a hearing. Now, there are also some bills having to do with penalty reduction. But before I get to those, I'm going to come over to the comments and see if you guys have any questions about the medical bills that I went over. All right, so we've got some people from Lago Vista, because I know where they're watching from. Mid Lithonia, Austin, awesome. Looks like we've got some people from San Antonio, Laredo. Awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Okay, back to business. Penalty reduction bills. Of course, the one that we have marked as priority legislation for us is HB 218 by Representative Joe Moody, who has been a wonderful advocate for cannabis law reform in our legislature. It would reduce the penalty of possession for an ounce or less of both cannabis flower and cannabis concentrate, while also instructing officers to no longer make arrests for the possession of personal use amounts or the related paraphernalia. Additionally, it facilitates a process for expungement of past marijuana charges. This bill has passed the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee and is calendars awaiting scheduling for floor debate. We anticipate that this bill is probably on a similar timeline trajectory as the medical bill that we mentioned by Representative Click, hoping for it to perhaps be on the House floor for debate and vote within the next week or so. Again, that kind of depends on how quickly some of these other priorities move. Now, there's 3 bills by Representative Terry Canales and Representative Joe Moody, as well as Senator Nathan Johnson, that would reduce the penalties for concentrates. And both of the House versions have been assigned to the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee and are pending a hearing. And the Senate version has been assigned to the Criminal Justice Committee and is pending a hearing. Now, there are some other bills by Representative Dago Bernal, Nicole Collier, Miss Symphonia Thompson, Jean Wu, Senator Eckhart, and Representative Moody, who all have to deal with penalty reduction in different ways. And these bills have all been assigned to committees, but are still pending hearings. So if you want to check out the details of these bills, there's about 7 or 8 of them. You can go to texasnormal.org and just click on the 88th Ledge tab there. In addition to having the list of all of these bills that I'm going over tonight, there are going to be 3 action alerts that you can participate in as well. One having to do with medical cannabis, penalty reduction, and legalization. So before I get into the legalization bills, I'm going to come back over here, see where else we got people from. Rowlett. All right. San Marcos. Very cool. We've got a lot of like central, a little south, a little north. That's awesome, guys. Thanks for tuning in. All right, let's talk legalization then. There is a House, 2 House and 1 Senate bill that has been filed. Senator Sarah Eckhart has filed SB 209 to regulate the cultivation, manufacture, processing, distribution, sale, testing, transportation, delivery, transfer, possession, and use of cannabis and cannabis products. 21 and up could possess 2.5 ounces of cannabis flower, 15 grams of cannabis concentrates. It would allow for home cultivation of up to 12 plants. Additionally, it creates parental protections for legal cannabis consumers. This has been assigned to the State Affairs Committee in the Senate and is pending a hearing. Now, Representative Tallarico has authored a bill, HB 1831, which is quite similar. The same 15 grams of concentrate, 2.5 ounces of flower, 21 and up could cultivate, and it does also implement a 10% tax on cannabis sales. This bill has been assigned to committee and is pending hearing. Now, there is also a bill by Representative Joe Moody and Representative Jessica Gonzalez that are very similar. It seems like 2.5 ounces of cannabis flower, 15 grams of concentrate, and 12 plants for home cultivation is just like the sweet spot for all of these authors. So definitely participate in the action alert on our website that has to do with legalization. Now, there are a few miscellaneous bills that we are following, excuse me, and one of them is House Bill 2562, which would require certain groups of benefit plans offered by the government to their employees to cover low THC cannabis. This has been assigned to pension investments and financial services and is pending a hearing. There's also another bill by the same author, HB 1250, that would increase the number of dispensing organizations required as a minimum from a minimum of 3 to a minimum of 6. Now, on another note, there is two bills having to do with hemp products and hemp regulation by Senator Charles Perry. One is kind of a cleanup bill, and the other addresses synthetic cannabinoids and dealing with some of those regulations there. Now, I want to talk real quick about some of the joint resolutions that we have. Now, in Texas, we don't have the ability to collect signatures at the state level and change, our laws at the state level. We have to go through the legislative process, and that process is known as a joint resolution. Pun not intended, but very appropriate. A joint resolution is used as a legislative measure to propose amendments to the Texas Constitution. It requires a supermajority in both chambers of the legislature to be adopted, but it doesn't require any action by the governor. Before becoming effective, the provisions of the joint resolution must be approved by the voters of Texas. Once the voters approve it, that comes back to the legislature for them to institute the regulations and statutes surrounding that. Now, there are one in the House and one in the Senate. In the Senate, it's SJR 22 by Senator Eckhart. And in the House, there's HJR 118, 89, and 91. And these would put, the question about legalization on the ballot before voters. This is definitely more of a heavy lift than passing regular legislation, but definitely still worthy for us to talk about. So I see some people watching from Waco and Wichita Falls as well. I haven't seen any questions really yet about the bills that I covered. So let me just kind of give you a summary. There's a lot of bills. And there are two currently that are really moving. All of the bills have been assigned to committee, but only two bills have had a hearing yet. HB 1805 having to do with medical improvements and HB 218 having to do with penalty reduction for flour, concentrates, and paraphernalia. Both of those passed their committee hearings unanimously. And it is of note that the chairs of those committees were also the authors. They have been fully enrolled in calendars at this point, and right now we're waiting for calendars to actually put it on the agenda for the House floor. We're being told that could take another week or so, depending on how the conversations around, school budgeting, the state's budgeting, some other issues go. But we are hopeful that we will see a floor vote in the coming week. So what can you do to help pass this legislation? So if you go to texasnormal.org and you click that tab, 88th legislative session, it's going to at the top tell you some of our priorities. And then right underneath, there will be 3 different action alerts you can participate in. One has to do with supporting medical access. One has to do with reducing penalties and decriminalizing in Texas. And the other has to do with supporting legalization. All of these are extremely important topics. Additionally, we do have an action alert having to do with the bill that I mentioned that would allow for governmental benefits to cover the costs of low THC cannabis medication. So before I sign off for tonight, I'm going to come over to these comments and see if you have any questions. So if you haven't dropped it already, you better drop it now. So Oscar wants to know what we can do to help get these bills passed. I just let you know they've had hearings already. So there was an opportunity there to submit virtual testimony, written testimony. And then at this point, it's really just reaching out to your legislators to let them know that when the time comes in the next week or so for them to vote on HB 1805 and HB 218, that you want them to vote yes for both. So that is what you can do right now. Now, Candace wants to know, do the joint resolutions also bypass Dan Patrick? False, they do not. So the bills would still have to go through the Senate, and the lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate, and he decides where all of the bills are assigned to committee and if they have a hearing or not. So ultimately, it is the same as any other legislation. It only bypasses the governor because it doesn't require the governor's signature. It would require the signature of the people of the state of Texas by way of a vote. So just to clarify that point for you guys. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other specific questions on here, so I'll leave you with this note. You can become a Texas Normal member. You can donate to support our legislative efforts. I want to thank everyone who came out to our lobby day on the 14th. It was a really great day. My senator is Senator Eckhart, and we had the largest group, and it was really great because we had to have our own room reserved for all of the people that were with us. So that was a very nice day. We have potentially some more hearings coming up in the coming weeks, depending on how everything shakes out. But we have 2 bills that are on the move in time to become law and ahead of deadlines, and that's extremely important. So I encourage all of you to reach out today to your legislator. You can go to texasnormal.org. If you hit that Take Action tab, it will drop down the 4 action alerts that we currently have. And I encourage you to participate in all of those, especially medical cannabis and penalty reduction, because they may be coming to the floor in the coming weeks, and we want to make sure that our legislators know that the constituents in their district support this legislation. So we have until May 31st, which is sine die, to get these bills across the finish line. So it seems like a lot of time, but considering we only have that much time every 2 years, it really does get to be crunch time there. So again, I encourage you not to dally in making the time to participate in these action alerts. Share them on social media with your friends, email them to your friends, whatever you would like to do with that. Definitely help us get out the word. So on that note, I want to say thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And I am looking forward to joining y'all next month with even more awesome information. And of course, we will continue to update through email and social media through the weeks in between. So make sure that you are following us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as signing up for our newsletter, which you can do so on our website by hitting the subscribe tab. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in tonight. And I look forward to chatting with you again soon.